All right, it is my pleasure to welcome you, Sean, to our leadership series. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Well, we can blame Phil on this if it, depending on how it goes, and we can give him the credit or blame him. But I appreciate him putting us together. And why don't we start? The easiest place to start is why don't you tell everybody your name, who you are, what you do.
Absolutely. So my name is Sean Conlon. Currently, I'm CEO and co-founder of a company here in San Diego, California called PetBox. We're a monthly subscription service that caters to dog and cat owners. We've done something a little bit unique in the subscription commerce space, which is we've actually taken the approach where we've really focused on creating a product that customers want. So long story short, what we did is a lot of market research, and what we do that's unique is we allow our members to actually curate and pack their own shipments. Which provides, interesting complications on the back end, but ultimately that's really what consumers were looking for, particularly with animals, where you're a little bit more fickle about what you feed them. So following standard subscription commerce, most companies send out a curated box that the company actually chooses. Sometimes it'll be tailored on a profile or something that you fill out, but ultimately, you're not really knowing what's going to show up each month.
I actually find that fascinating because I just came back from traveling, so I got to get into my pet box and put my package together. But I thought that was pretty awesome because you actually get a nice package, and so I found that interesting. So I'm going to try it, and I'll give you my feedback.
Yeah, awesome.
And my three dogs say thank you. So this is a leadership series. We're going to get into a few different topics surrounding that, but I know it's a long answer, but try to keep it short. What is your perspective or definition of leadership?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think there's a variety of types of leaders that are out there in the world, whether it be government sector, business, education, really doesn't matter. But ultimately, in my opinion, what it boils down to is how do you lead a group of people, a team, if you will, to accomplish a certain task at hand. Maybe that's training. Maybe it's educating a workforce through college or whatever other mechanism. Maybe it's leading a company. Maybe it's leading a division within your company. But ultimately, you are set at a position where people are following you, and there's a variety of responsibilities that come along with something like that. But ultimately, my opinion on leadership is really that.
Yeah, I think you actually said it really succinctly. It's not everybody, there is a difference between leading and managing.
Exactly.
Now you have a background. I mean, you've done a lot of cool stuff at a young age, and from products to social media, different arenas, and now you're leading a company that's growing in really a major market. Why PetBox, and how did it come about?
Well, ultimately, what's kind of funny is I actually started out my life as an accountant.
Yeah, my condolences, because that's how I started out.
Which I'm actually very grateful for that, because you get a holistic understanding of a business. We can look at balance sheets and financial statements and all that, and really get the heartbeat of a company in a matter of a couple moments. So layering that foundation was very important, and I highly recommend any kind of education around that. But regardless, when PetBox came about, it was really, we were looking at, so my other co-founder, Will Ford, and I were involved in a previous business venture together as well, and kind of looking for the next opportunity. And his wife had gotten him a Birchbox, which, for anybody unfamiliar, Birchbox basically started subscription commerce. They're doing extremely well over 1 million members right now. But they essentially started out as a product for women, where you could receive grooming samples once a month delivered right to your door, $10 a month, super affordable, and solve the problem of having to go find these product samples at different department stores. So we saw that, we're like, okay, this is pretty cool, interesting. Did a lot of research on them. Naturally, we're both dog lovers. I've got a golden retriever that's 115 pounds, which he's massive. So for a golden, that's pretty big. Usually they average about 85 pounds. But we're busy working guys. We have wives that are busy, working professionals as well. Ultimately, we didn't have a lot of time to spend at the pet store finding out products that were good from bad, doing research online. So we were like, wouldn't it be cool if there's a service like this where it would show up at our door, we didn't have to worry about shipping, and it was only premium products, so we would know that anything that is offered is going to be good. And if Bo has any issues with allergies or whatever, within that, we'd be able to filter out some of those products and get it delivered right to your door. So really, it started out as something that simple. Then we did a lot of market research. So one thing that we're very diligent and I would say disciplined in is not chasing that shiny ball and going full force against it, but rather saying, okay, look, that's a great opportunity. Let's reel it back and see what the actual opportunity is without, putting a significant amount of investment. So honestly, what we did is I coded a really basic website. We threw it up on an iPad. We walked ourselves out to about a dozen dog parks in San Diego, and we're like, this is the coolest new company in town. Here's what we do. We ship a box to your house once a month, yada, yada, yada. And fast forward 30 days, which our first month that we did this was April of 2013. Fast forward 30 days, and we had signed up 150 people, literally just talking to people at dog parks. So at that point,
talk about the real basics of market research.
That's it, man. I mean, honestly, it's you're going to learn a lot because you're the one out there trying to sell a product. B, also, sorry, we've got a train going by there.
That's all right. We'll have the dogs soon.
Exactly. And B, you're really going to learn about what customers are going to want in a service like this. And you can kind of experiment. It's kind of cool because you can sell features that you might not have right now, knowing that somebody's probably not going to say yes anyways. But you can kind of craft that and work around, what their objections are, and really ultimately just learn what they're looking for in a service like that.
That's fantastic. It's brilliant. And I had a chance to meet Will, I think about over a year ago when this was first starting, and it was intriguing then. And you guys are doing some good stuff. How do you, I compare a lot of things to sports, especially business. And I always love to hear how an entrepreneur creates a winning culture, especially when you're leading a fast-growing company, and there's different stages of a fast-growing company. A lot of entrepreneurs get all excited when they get the funding, but then they realize, holy cow, the work is just really now beginning too.
Yep.
So how do you create a winning culture in a company like yours?
That's a really good question. I mean, so I grew up as a four-sport athlete, and ultimately in life, I really think business is athletics in a way. It really is. What's really important is, as you go through, let's use football as an analogy. You go through a football game, it's a couple hours long, you've got 4 quarters, and it's a variety of emotions wrapped up in that, unless you're just, putting the hammer down and blowing somebody out 65-0. Which is great. I mean, hey, do that in business. That's a big exit right there with no competition, but it's very rare to find that. But you're going to have a lot of emotions. I mean, you're going to have plays that are awful. They're absolutely horrible. You're going to have plays that are amazing. And I think one of the important things in building a business, especially a fast-growing business, is you're celebrating the wins all the time, and you're recognizing the losses and adjusting. And on that ongoing basis, you've got to course correct. Maybe it's a total pivot in the business. Maybe it's not that drastic. Maybe you just had a bad pass, it was intercepted, whatever else. Now you've got to go on defense and figure out how you recoup what just happened in the yards that you just lost. Mm-hmm. So I think, creating that kind of culture within a business, whether the company itself is actually winning at that point in time, you've got to instill a culture to where people, A, feel empowered in their positions, B, feel like if something does go wrong, that, hey, we actually know how to fix this, or we have a process of learning how to fix something. And ultimately just celebrating the wins along the way, because, you're creating jobs for people and creating a good environment for people to really expand in. But ultimately, there is the day-to-day, the grind of building a business, especially with a startup. I mean, it's, 80-hour weeks, 90-hour weeks. We all know how that goes. So everybody's here in the trenches. It's not just us as co-founders. Everybody's here with us. So we actually had a team dinner last night to celebrate the close of our first round of funding. And it was awesome. It was so much fun. Take a couple hours out of the day, spend a little bit of money, get to know people on a personal level, because it truly, as a startup, is a family. And you've really got to have all those values kind of sprinkled in on top of the get it done mentality. You've got to have some of that in there as well.
The infamous chemistry, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I know it's and that's the fun part actually at the end of the day is because when you do win the championship, if you will, everything people talk about is their teammates, right, basically. And when they retire, a sports guy, the thing they say they miss the most is the dressing room with their teammates.
Exactly.
So that's got to be telling us something.
Yeah, it's so true.
I don't know if do you have a board yet for your company? An official board?
So we do. It's very small at the moment. As I was thinking about these questions, that was one thing that came to mind, that I'm actually learning from right now. The previous companies that I had built, they were just basically giant cash flow businesses, cash cows. Didn't need to seek outside investment. They did really well on their own. Didn't really need a board. Saturating the market was going really well. So that's something we're actually going through right now. So with regards to the board, we've got one board seat outside of my co-founder Will and myself, which was our largest stakeholder, or I should say investor, in the company at the moment.
Yeah, and the one thing at least in our business, we talk about a lot is right fit, whether it's a right fit executive or a right fit board member. What would you look for if you were looking to be on a board? Well, what would you look for to make sure it's the right fit for you then?
Absolutely. I mean, ultimately, you're looking to I'll use the analogy of sprinkle, but sprinkle your expertise in given areas. So maybe that's, let's say I have strength in e-commerce and marketing. When I'm looking to join a board, I'm going to find those kind of companies that I know that I can say, hey, you guys are doing this really well. You guys are doing this really poorly. Let's fix it. Let's adjust course here so we can, make a winning strategy going forward. In addition to, what do you have behind you? So I forget what book this is, and I should really know this, but I remember reading a book that talked about we're all keys or locks for other individuals. So somebody might be a key to our lock that once you unlock it, it opens an entirely new door, path, whatever it is. And likewise, you are that to someone else as well. So as a board member, you've got an onslaught of stuff behind you, whether it's relationships, whether it's past successes, past failures. I mean, honestly, we all know you learn more by failures than anything else. But ultimately, that's what I'll be looking for down the road. I mean, I'm 28 at the moment, so I still have at least a dozen or so of these to go. But eventually, I'd like to be more of a mentor to other startups as well.
You'd actually be surprised, because we do a lot of board work and board advisory. For maybe the obvious reasons, there's a lot of younger executives getting on boards now, predominantly, like you would say, in maybe the social media, the digital media, or e-commerce, or whatever, in those type of arenas. And I love that analogy with the locks and doors, because there's more seasoned people that need your key in their lock, if you will, to open that up. And it's never too early to start the process of exploring board positions, because there's a lot more diversity going on in boards now, and not just black, white, women diversity, but all types of things like that. So I think you're right on the money. Segueing into social media, I've used this always sticks in my mind. I had an executive tell me a while back that he used to be able to have a meeting, get everybody in his office, heart to heart, get things talked out, everybody leaves, gets it done. Now he said he has a meeting, and before anybody walks out the door, it's on Twitter, basically. And there's obviously pros and cons to that, and social media, like anything, can be fantastic. Or as I spoke to some high school seniors recently, you have an opportunity to brand yourself and create a reputation like never before. Is it going to be a good one or not? How do you view the impact of social media and how it affects business owners' decisions and actions?
I mean, ultimately, social media is the way the world goes around now. I mean, it really is. We're sitting here talking about PetBox, and this is a brand that was built on social media. You go to our Instagram accounts, you go to Twitter, you go to Facebook. I mean, we've got tens of thousands of followers that are A, passionate about our brand, B, a part of a community, and C, we're actually able to take those people and move them into a purchasing decision and actually get them to transact, which for brands on social media, that's pretty rare. A lot of times you're using it for brand awareness or whatever else, but from a personal level, what I've taken on my plate is to give people an inside look to PetBox and what a startup looks like. So ultimately, you've got all the social media noise that's out there. And you've really got to figure out if you are going to be a business executive on social media, either for your company or maybe you want to be a thought leader or whatever it is. You've got to have your story, and it's got to be very consistent and ongoing. It's the kind of thing where if we were to just sporadically do social media posts here and there, it wouldn't do anything. You've got to be very, very consistent about it, very concise to the point, and give people a reason to follow you.
How do you who does it?
So we have a team of about 4 people actually, and a variety of interns that help on it as well. because a lot of it comes down to content discovery. So you've got to be circulating this content that people want to ingest, and to do that, it just takes a lot of time to find it. So we try and find, funny, cute dog stuff, cat stuff. We've actually been marketing to pigs recently. There's a big trend with people having micro pigs. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, ultimately, it's just a lot of time more so than anything else.
Right. Yeah, that's what we found too, and more and more C-level people, executives have felt over the last several years that they need to be on social media. Obviously, otherwise, by not being on, it's not good. But there's only so much time in the day, so they have to get people to do it. So no, it's definitely made an impact. Speaking of making an impact, you talked before a little bit about you started out in accounting and it was a good base for you, etc. And I've got kids that are getting ready to go into college right now, for example, and they're looking at entrepreneurial business. They don't know what they want to do yet, but they want the foundation of that. What advice would you give up and coming leaders, who they've got that insatiable, thirst for knowledge, but they also aren't really good at deferred gratification. Yeah. They want it now. How do they prepare?
Well, ultimately, it was interesting what you just said there about the delayed gratification, because that is so true. And in today's world, you almost expect success immediately, but the reality is it doesn't happen like that. Reading through Inc. magazine and Fast Company and all these, it's great, and it is good learnings from a base layer standpoint. But at the same time, sometimes it can paint the wrong picture, because you're seeing all these successful companies that seem to happen overnight. But the reality is, there is so much work that goes into that, and that's what I think young leaders really need to realize is there's a lot of pushing that you have to do to get what you want in life. And I think most important to me is building that foundation layer. So I still don't really know what I want to do in life. Exactly.
That's okay. I'm still figuring it out.
You kind of just go through it, and opportunities happen, and you've got to assess those and say, this is something I'm willing to go towards. This is going to benefit me in the long haul, or this is not. It's just going to be a distraction.
Yeah, it's funny. I heard Peter Thiel talk about Facebook and stuff. And he was one of the first investors, and he said you got to understand that's a phenomena. There's others that were better, worse, or whatnot, but that's a phenomena. It's not like you just get Facebook and bam, you get 1 million people or whatever. Hey, what has been your, at the ripe old age of 28, man, what has been your most challenging leadership
Well, this one's burned into my retinas, but basically, yeah, exactly.
I'm glad I asked.
So the other companies that I had built, I was able to build them in a way that I could outsource components and really keep it flowing pretty easily. And it just kind of grew. It was not an exponential growth, but it was a 20% month over month kind of growth. So PetBox, totally different story. We experience on average anywhere from 200 to 1,000% growth each month. There was a month where we went from about 5,000 recurring members to over 11,000 in 15 days. That's not easy.
Unreal.
So, what my biggest challenge had been in the very beginning is you have all this stuff to do in building a company, and you have very scarce resources, whether it's money, time, employees, and you've got to figure out how to do the things that you need to do, but ultimately you're managing and building this company underneath you so that you can start to, eliminate some of the task work that plagues, a lot of time and some of the issues with time management. So I would say that was my biggest challenge, is figuring out how to keep everything in the momentum going forward, but start to backfill the stuff that you need to as a company and really allow yourself to grow, to that 25, 50 person organization.
Yeah, very smart, because you could be stuck in the
Exactly.
details forever and not move forward. Well, here's a silly question, which you've kind of already answered. Do you have? I know you have a lab. You have a pet. You have a lab.
No,
Any other pets?
He's actually a golden retriever, but you're fine.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, we've had him. I got him when he was 6 weeks old. I grew up in Indiana, just outside of Indianapolis, and had gotten him when he was about 6 weeks old, and now he's 8.5 years old. So he's an awesome dog. Ultimately, I'd like to have probably 4 or 5 dogs, all in all. Living in Southern California, space is a precious commodity, so right now it's not in our favor, but Yeah, I'd like to have quite a few more dogs.
Well, I've got three if you want to adopt any. So just let me know. And if you want the two kids getting ready to go into
There we
college, you
go.
can adopt them too. Do you have a favorite activity
Yeah,
or sport?
it's changed over the years. I was big into track coming out of high school, and then I ran at Indiana University for a year. And then after that, I was actually on the wakeboard team, it was a club at the time. Now it's actually a sanctioned D1 sport, which is kind of cool to see. I still like to do
Yeah.
that, but ultimately now it's more about running, mountain biking, those sort of things. But I really like reading business books. That's always good to continue to educate yourself and just kind of stay within that mode. But yeah, as life goes on, I mean, you know this, your interests and activities change just depending on what season of life you're really in.
Yeah, although I'm a major
Oh,
hockey
nice.
fan
That's
through and
awesome.
through. So, do you have favorite movie, TV show, Broadway
Absolutely.
show, anything
So
like that?
definitely Top Gun. That's the best movie ever created. That's what I can watch. Yeah,
Tell me how you
exactly.
really feel.
That's one I could watch on repeat. Got that on Blu-ray now, so that's a good one. But no, more recently, I've really been hooked on this show on NBC called Blacklist. It's so
I love
good.
it.
It's such a good show. It's good to see something after 24 that has that intent. Yeah,
Yeah, oh, yeah,
yeah,
you're
it's
right
just
on the
got that
money.
intensity about it. It always keeps you thinking, and it's got a good plot line that kind of stays course through the entire season, but it weaves in different mini plots, subplots within each episode as well.
Great choice, great choice. How about favorite music?
Man, so believe it or not, I'm actually a giant country music fan. That's pretty much all I listen to. So,
Well, apparently you lost Taylor
I know.
Swift. I think she's
I'm actually happy about that. But
How about favorite type of food?
I'm a very picky eater. So growing up in the Midwest, my diet consisted of steak, potatoes, and green beans and corn.
No,
So
yeah.
being in SoCal, I like a lot of seafood. But ultimately, if I had to pin it down to one, it's probably a California burrito. It's my favorite food. Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
keep it simple. I like it. Well, it's good to get to know you. Congrats on what you're doing, and we really appreciate the time
Absolutely.
you took,
Thank you. I
man.
appreciate it.